Okay, well, I'm going to start this afternoon's session. Second speaker of the day is Mr. Hermann. He's a GIS analyst, which stands for Unmanned Aerial Systems Analyst. Ryan has been with GIS in PDS since the year 2014, and he's responsible for all GIS drone projects. You have seen some of that. And we include aerial photography collection, inspections, planning, emergency response, data processing, and analyst. And Ryan has a DA in GIS from Ohio University. And he was previously with Duke Energy, and also interned at the Rich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. Please join me to welcome Ryan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Do I need to turn this mic on, or is it?
It's good? Okay. So I am Ryan Hermann. Happy GIS Day. It's an exciting day, and I know it's also Geography Awareness Week, so happy Geography Awareness Week as well. That video that you saw just previously was a video that we made for an award that we won from ERISA. It's the ESIG Award, Exemplary Systems in Government. We won the Distinguished Award in that for our NKY Drone Lab Drone Projects initiative that we've had over the last 2 years in northern Kentucky. And so that video was just in correlation with the award and with what we submitted for that award, so that you can kind of get an idea of the examples that we've done over the course of these last 2 years. In conjunction with that, we've also made this story map that explains some of the other projects that we've done with the drone. So we'll go into a little bit more detail of some of the projects that you saw in the video. We'll include a couple more. We'll talk about the statistics the drone has, what some requirements are, when we can go over some ROIs, some return on investments that we've seen as a local government agency using a drone. And then if there's any questions along with that, feel free to ask them as we go. So, we have been Part 107 certified, which is the license certification that you need from the FAA to be able to commercially fly a drone. We have been certified for over 2 years now. It's about 2.5 years. I am the only drone pilot, so any flights that you've seen was me flying them. In that amount of time, this slides a little bit out of date, but we have flown over 200 miles with our drone, accounting for 32.5 hours. It's probably closer to 35 hours of actual flight time with the drone. We do only have one drone. I did bring it here, sorry, I should have gotten it out earlier. We fly a unique Typhoon H. It's a hexacopter. So simple, nice backpack. This drone here has a battery life, depending on how you fly, anywhere from 20 to 28 minutes or so. Depending on how we're flying, like if we're flying over the river like you saw, we'll only keep it out there for maybe 10 to 12 minutes, because if the battery malfunctions in some way, I don't feel like going swimming, so I want to bring it back as soon as possible. The map you see here kind of represents every single flight that we have done in the last 2 years. Bigger the circle, the more flights that we've done in that area. As you zoom in more, you'll be able to see more flights pop up. And if we click on that, we can also get information from it. So the drone obviously is GPS enabled. We do get an X, Y, and Z value from it. And we can use that to bring it into other softwares to get Ortho Mosaics. We can derive contours, DEMs, DSMs as well. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it even takes information that accounts for wind, my max elevation during the flight, distance of the flight, temperature, and it will even come up with a location or anything like that. And you may have noticed several of the icons here have a much larger icon. Those are the examples that we're going to go through to kind of briefly explain some of the projects that we've done. So Planning and Development Services of Kenton County is the planning agency for Kenton County, the engineering, zoning, and building and infrastructure inspections for Kenton County. LinkGIS is part of the PDS consortium. We also serve Campbell and Pendleton County in northern Kentucky as well. And this was one of our first projects that we did with our engineering department. Their main job is to inspect new roads when they're being built. The idea is that when a developer builds the road, they're going to pave it. We want to make sure that when they hand over that newly paved road to the county or the city isn't going to have to go and repave it in a couple years because it failed. That's a waste of tax money, and we want to make sure that they are inspected and they are put in to the highest caliber that they can. What we did with the drone with this project was we were checking the curb and gutter. The curb and gutter is that what you're seeing here, right along that edge where the dirt meets the road. What we were finding was that this was failing before homeowners took the property of their newly built houses and before the city took care of or took over the road from the developers. So we wanted to get that timestamp on the curb and gutter to see when was it failing. Was it failing right when they put it in? Was it failing as the developers were still contracting and doing the work? Or was it failing due to weather? And you can see in this last bit of the slide, there's gravel, there's trucks. Off camera there was dump trucks that were just riding over the curb and gutter. Back in between where the dirt is, there's actually about a 3-inch gap of dirt. And so what we discovered was that the dump trucks that were going in and dumping the cement or dropping off the wood for the new houses, they were coming and rolling over those curb and gutters, and it was failing. They were crushing over that weight because there wasn't any pressure on the backside to hold it in. So the drone was used again to document this from time to time, going back to those streets just to make sure that everything was going the way it needed to be so that we weren't wasting taxpayer dollars. So as part of GIS, we do serve first responders in the northern Kentucky area, and this was one of those that you can't plan for a grass fire, you can't plan for a natural disaster. A train was coming through, and there was a broken wheel bearing, and it was shooting sparks up the hill. And so this actually stretched along 2,300 feet of railroad. And it's very thin, very, very steep terrain. They were having, you can see in this video, the terrain is very, very angled up. They were actually having to transport the first responders and all the equipment using UTVs, side-by-sides, gators from the various public works in the area. This particular incident had, I believe, 9 fire departments, 3 different public works departments from 3 different counties all responding. And because of the length of the issue, everybody was very, very spread out. They were very sparse in where they were fighting. And what the drone was able to do was to get that bird's eye view. So if somebody reported that there was some smoke over from an area that we hadn't seen smoke anymore, rather than having a first responder put down their hose, trudge along all this terrain, there's a lot of honeysuckle and underbrush in there, the drone can just fly right overhead, take a look, and go, okay, it was just a wind direction change, the smoke is actually coming from this spot which we already know about. Or we can take it to say, yeah, there's a new buildup, it's sparked back up, and we can get the data, or get the responders over there to help fight that new area. Post-event, we always want to know, how much was damaged, what was affected. One of the key things that the drone was able to do was we got an instant Ortho Mosaic of the entire area, and be able to take that back, plug it into ArcGIS, ArcPro, and calculate the amount of acres that was burned in this fire. and I believe it ended up being right around 7 acres. Because of the fast action of the first responders and everything, the only thing that was damaged in this incident was the underbrush on that hill. There was a subdivision up above, and they were fighting very hard to make sure that none of those houses were affected by that. And thankfully, with this project, or with this incident, nothing was. All right, this was probably the longest project that we did. Originally, this was a giant 24-acre parcel, all forested, and they went through and logged it out to create a subdivision. But you can see in this video, it is very steep, very uneven. It would be very hard to put houses there. So the method is to cut and fill. You chop off the top of the hill, fill the bottom, raise it up, even it out. This is a big project. It was a very controversial project. So we wanted to be on top of our game as the organization that inspects and manages and approves things like this. So every day, every couple of days, we would go out and film and kind of get this time-lapse view of what the area looks like. This cut and fill project took, I want to say, about 6 months from start to finish. This was December of last year is when the concrete actually went in. But you can see there's a big difference between what it looks like now with the road to what it once was. And again, this is a great tool for documenting time-stamped XY location, what is happening to the area. We were also gathering Ortho Mosaics so we could see as the ground gradually got higher and higher and higher. The numbers on this, they ended up cutting off about 20 feet from the top of the mountain to fill that valley in 28 feet to raise it out and kind of even it out. All right, in February of 2018, we had that big Ohio River flood. This was the highest the Ohio River has been since 1997. So we had 20-year difference, 20 years to wait for something this big. The sad part is that sometimes some organizations actually want it to flood so that we can study and understand what's going on. And that is particularly important with this particular area in Melbourne and California, Kentucky. They were considered lost towns. Every year, floods come in, ruin the town. FEMA doesn't want to go and keep paying money and money. And the Army Corps of Engineers said it's the Ohio River that floods it. The locals tell a different story. It's not the Ohio River. It's the contributaries that flood into it. But how do you prove that? Unfortunately, it's with a flood event. So we had to wait until one of these happened. So back in February of 2018, that's exactly what happened. We got out there, we were out there an hour past its highest crest that it had been. And we went out, documented, okay, we know the flood stage level right now per Meldal Dam was 64.5 feet. That means at 64.5 feet, X house is underwater, X street is under, we can't see a road or anything like that. We were able to document all of that. We were also assisting the first responders with some of the river camps that had sometimes up to a half a mile of water between them where there was once a road. Rather than get a fire crew out there with a boat, have them walk door to door, we took the drone over, quick fly over the water, flew low across, and it does make a nice buzzing hum noise. So we were hoping that anybody that might be out there that needs help, they would be able to hear it, come out, wave their hands, and then we could get first responders out there to assist them. But you can see all of these houses were stranded. There's actually a bridge and a road that was right there. These are some of those river camps that I was talking about. Most of the houses along the river, they are on stilts because you're on a river. Rivers tend to flood, so they do have those preparations, but you can see some of those places still do go underwater. because of the data that we had, along with some of the GPS data that we collected, we were able to get a 50-50 match grant from the US GIS to fund more research into how the contributaries flood in this area and how they can mitigate the flooding so that these two cities don't flood as often, or at least as severe as they do now. Water tank inspections. This was one. We are partners with Northern Kentucky Water District. Northern Kentucky Water District serves three or four counties in Northern Kentucky. Every year they have to manually inspect all of their tanks. They have to get up, they have to look and see, is the padlock still on the lock on the top? Is there paint? Is there paint issues? Is there rust issues? Is there a missing bolt, wire, anything like that? What the drone can do is all of that inspections in a fraction of the time. Normally it takes 4 hours, on average 4 hours to finish one tank. 2 men harnessing up, climbing the water tank, walking around. It's hazardous. There's hazard pay, double the insurance. It's much more dangerous. I can do everything that they can do in about 15 minutes while still staying on the ground. We serve 27 water tanks in our 2 counties is what we inspect. We were able to fly, including the driving and the flying. We can do every single water tank in our 2 counties in 2 days of flying, 16 hours. If you calculated the same for how many water tanks with a traditional inspection with man, it would take almost 2 weeks. So the ROI on that, not only in the information and having just pictures and videos at the ready whenever you need to, the ROI there is in the cost saving is in that man hours and time saved. So again, with inside planning development services, we have the planning department. Something that the planners sometimes conduct is parking lot studies. They want to see how parking lots are being used, how can they better be used, and what's their function in regards to the city. Traditionally, when this happens, you hire some interns and they walk every single parking lot every couple of hours with a clicker, just click, 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 and then they write it down on a spreadsheet. And that's it. And they wait a couple hours and then they do it again. Same theory, same concept, but with the drone, I don't have to walk. I can stand there on the sidewalk, set the drone up, I can autonomously fly it. I had the same flight plan every single time. It takes 9 minutes. This was maybe a 3-acre parking lot in Fort Mitchell. Fly the whole thing, taking pictures, come back to the nice warm office, it was cold those days, and be able to get an Ortho Mosaic and a DEM, a DSM. We now have time-stamped images of what the parking lots, exactly where the cars were when, at those particular times, whether it be morning rush hour, lunchtime, evening rush hour, evening dinner time. We can go back to that and look at that for years to come to understand, how has the parking lot's dynamics changed over those times. So something about drones, if you are thinking about using it in your future job or for any projects, the drone doesn't have to be a new tool and open up a new avenue of what you can do in your organization or in your projects. A lot of our projects in the beginning, sure, we had a new idea, let's go try and do this. But a lot of our projects now are taking existing projects that we've done for years and years, before I was even born, and we're just revamping it and we're creating a new workflow to include the drone to get better, more efficient, and more reliable data. So keep in mind if you're thinking about how can I use a drone, don't just think of something new. Think of your past projects and how you can better it with your drone. This was one of those happy little accident fluke projects. We were out flying a couple schools in Pendleton County for some active shooter preparedness. And the judge exec, who is the highest leader in the land in terms of the county public offices, asked us to come and fly their courthouse. Their courthouse is a very old courthouse, and so we were flying it just to get some images. And we were flying around, and we noticed on the roof there was this bright spot. And as we zoomed in, we're thinking, what is that? What is that? And we came in, and it was missing shingles. And we got to talking, and they had known that there was flooding occurring, a flood issue occurring in the top of the building, and they couldn't pinpoint what it was. Without the drone, they would have never been able to see where those missing shingles were. From any of the surrounding buildings, there was just no easy spot. Even from the roof access, there was no way to be able to see that spot. So without the drone, would have never been able to see it. Taking those preventative measures of fixing the spot and saving them tens of thousands of dollars in water damage to their courthouse. We also partner with our local conservation district and conservancy. Several of the projects we've done, this is an ongoing one. We are time-lapsing and trying to get an idea of the honeysuckle, which we know is an invasive species in the area, and where it's growing on the conservation sites, and how, when we begin the honeysuckle mitigation process, how we are affecting it, how are we controlling it to try and dampen where it goes. So this is along the Licking River in Kenton County. You can see we have a nice open field, but along the woods where the big trees are with the bare limbs, underneath is still green. Honeysuckle is the first to green and the last to fall. In terms of the spring-summer cycle. So this is a good time that we can document when the bare leaves are off the tall trees, but we can still see the honeysuckle on the ground. So by documenting this, we are getting an idea of the percentage of honeysuckle in an area. And again, for when we go back and mitigate, we'll be able to document and see, okay, where has the treatment worked or not worked. We're also working along the Banklet Creek. This again is one of those contributaries into the Licking River that causes a lot of flooding. It's a fast flooding. It raises high, it raises fast and high, it leaves fast as well, creating a lot of cut banks and really damaging and eroding the surrounding area. So the plan was to mitigate that. Instead of having a quick erosion and quick drop, how can we mitigate it, slow it, and hold that water in place? So what you're seeing right now is a before and an after of the same area. They created a levee or a dam along Banklet Creek, right here. And so when the water raises, it will flood over the levee, pool and fill in this area, and then slowly be released back into the water rather than quickly. We also, as you can see, all of the trees that were planted in the area, those are going to help the soil. They're good. I'm not sure which trees they are, but they're good for retaining the soil so that the soil doesn't erode or anything like that. And again, this is just kind of documenting how the conservation is using their money, how they are mitigating and planning to use an area. They also created trails along this area too. It's Wolsing Woods. I highly recommend there. It's not really known, so it's a very quiet hike. If anybody is ever interested in going there. They also created some frog habitats, and these are bat houses. These trees here. They just took trees, dug a hole, and put them in there and hollowed out some holes. So again, with that ROI, return on investments, you saw in the video, we have about $3,500 invested into our drone. It's a little bit higher now with licensing and softwares because we've had this over a couple years. But even if we say $5,000, we have the Ohio River flood, helped contribute $18,000. The Stevenson Road project was $1.8 million. the water tank inspections, we have an average cost savings a year of $26,000. So for $5,000, we're taking all of those and contributing that and saving the taxpayer money. Really think about how drones can help you out, because there's a lot of value in a drone, and it really doesn't cost too much money. It's a $150 test that you have to go through the FAA. It's an 80-question multiple choice test. You can take it again if you fail. It's just another $150. A good drone, a decent drone to start out with, you can get by with $1,000. I mean, yeah, sure, there's $100,000 drones and there's $10,000 drones, but most of the data that you need, unless you're getting into a really niche field with your drone, $1,000 is going to go a long way in terms of what you can do with it and how you can make money, save money, either or. These are just some of the average stats that we have. All the different areas that we've flown. You can see during the flooding event, we were along the river a lot. And lastly, if anybody was wondering, we do use DronetoMap, which is an Esri product for all of our drone analysis. It is very, very simple to use. Does anybody use DronetoMap or heard of it? Okay. It is part of the Arc Pro platform. Is everybody here pretty much using ArcGIS if you're a GIS person, or is anybody using Arc Pro? Couple people. I would recommend start using Arc Pro. They are phasing out ArcGIS. It's a 32-bit. Everybody wants to go to the 64-bit. But a lot of their new functions are only running in tandem with Arc Pro. So Arc Pro is running behind the scenes of DronetoMap. You have to have an Arc Pro license in order to use it. But it's a very, very simple tool to use. All you have to do is have all your photos. If you're creating an Ortho Mosaic for an example, put it all in one folder, connect to that folder, and if you have it set up in your preferences, you hit run. And in 45 minutes, you can have up-to-date ortho imagery. It also it figures out your flight path based on the number scheme of your pictures. It does take into effect the elevation, things like that. We can get contours from it. We can get DEMs, DSMs. The contours from it aren't great. It doesn't have a reference point for anybody wondering that. So the lowest elevation in your Ortho Mosaic is going to be 0. And your highest is going to be whatever it is from there. So if you have a reference of knowing, okay, it's 0 in my created topo, but in the real world it's 762, you can extrapolate from that. But that is one little extra step you would have to take. But I highly recommend DronetoMap or Pix4D for anybody that is interested in doing any drone analysis or drone data analysis. Very easy to use, and you can get very detailed information as well. And lastly, that's the video. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Yes, very, very interesting talk. And I'm particularly interested in the flooding, to the flooding monitoring. So can you please introduce more about how to do the flooding monitoring?
So for the drone specifically, all we really did was got a call, went out there. We were watching the time, whether we were taking pictures or videos, and when we took the picture, we would timestamp that. It's already timestamped in the JPEG, X, Y, and Z location, so that when we could go back with the Ortho Mosaic from that area and use our in-house LiDAR to understand the topo, so that the biggest thing was we didn't know what flooded when and where. We didn't know at what stage what was going to be underwater or not. We had ideas. FEMA has their 100 and 500 year floodplains, but in terms of particular inches and feet, we didn't know. So the drone was used to document that.
So it is possible to calculate the water levels from the drone image.
In theory, we could. We were using the flood levels that came off of the dams. Like Meldal Dam was the closest dam. So we were getting the river stage level from them, and then just figuring out based on the picture where that meant the water was. We weren't calculating volume, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
But if you have the DM, you could.
Yes. Yes. And in-house we do have the DEMs, DSM, LiDAR, all that. So we could have. That wasn't the scope. The scope was to get the funding for more mitigation project. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question, and this may be actually more for the group, because you've mentioned ArcPro and having an Esri representative here, two professors, multiple professors of geography and planning who teach the skills. How do you see us using ArcPro in the academic environment, being able to give students access to it?
It's funny. I was just telling. So we at PDS, we do have interns. If anybody is interested in internship, when they come around, come see me. We're currently closed, but I was speaking to our current intern, Madison, in the back here. My opinion right now is that students need to know both. They need to know both ArcGIS and ArcPro. When I was in college 6 years ago, ArcPro wasn't there, so it was just ArcGIS. But now we are seeing the flip, where ArcGIS 32-bit, ArcPro is 64-bit. There's just more processing power that ArcPro can get into. Now that I think it's becoming more and more accepted in the workforce, you're seeing more and more companies using it. The trick is, we're in that phase where everybody's wishy-washy. So you're going to have some companies that are saying, oh, we're not going to use ArcPro, we stick with ArcGIS because that's what we know. And you're going to have the others that are going to be ArcPro forward. So in the next 5 to 6 years, I think it's a good idea to have at least an understanding of both. But afterwards, it's most likely going to be pro. And I didn't realize we had an Esri representative here. Sorry if I said it.
Yes, as you mentioned, actually, we're phasing out the maps.
Right.
And at first, maybe there's some controversy when ArcPro is first released.
Mm-hmm.
There's some like software is not that really stable,
Right.
and a lot of
Right.
agencies are not willing to kind of download it. And it's based on completely different framework. Like this
Yes.
4 bits. And from the Python side, it's Python 3.
That's true, yeah. Yeah.
Might not be completely compatible with their previous workflow. And nowadays, it's getting much better. Just means the ArcGIS Pro is really a flagship desktop product.
Yes. And I fully support and agree with that. because we were that company where everybody has been doing ArcGIS. I mean, we have people in our office that they're on 30 years in the GIS industry. They were ArcInfo 2 point whatever. And so we had people that were just, no, it's ArcGIS. That's what I want to use. This big, bad, scary ArcPro thing. Now in our office, we have 9-10 people in our office. We're about 75% ArcPro. Everybody still has ArcGIS on their desktop because every now and then there's just something that I know I can do it quicker. But again, it's that transition period.
Could you give a simple summary of the differences and the similarities between the two?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically, from the programming point of view, it's based on different systems. One is 62-bit from math, and for ArcGIS Pro it's 64. So which means that performance-wise, it's going to be better. And also another major that I just mentioned is about the Python ability. We know that a lot of those different toolboxes, you can use that in the user interface, but if you want to use scripting, programming workflow using Python, you have to import ArcPy. So in ArcMap, those ArcPy is maybe developed based on Python 2. And I know that on the Python community, we actually solved like the 2. There are new issues, they try to fix it out that. But for Python 3, which is new, compatible with a lot of data science packages as mentioned there, and ArcGIS Pro is based on that. So that gives you kind of a better compatibility. So if you want to integrate your GIS processing workflow with others, Python 3 is kind of amazing. And other than, obviously, ArcGIS Pro has a better user interface based on Windows application functions. So you will see that it's unlike that is based on that development requirements. It is still like Windows XP or Windows version. But now you have a very much better user experience. And also for like that visualization, there are more kind of rendering capabilities, different styles, and also, yeah, one really crucial piece is that S3 is moving towards from like software-based company to more data science-based driven, and we are moving toward cloud. So with ArcGIS Pro, you can easily connect to like enterprise environment, like ArcGIS Online, or your own organization's enterprise environment. You can, in that case, you will use ArcGIS Pro more like client side, but you do all the extra computing for the data in a distributed fashion. So data from different vendors and computing will happen in like distributed analytic service, but you don't have that capabilities in hardware. So it's purely like desktop based. So those are the main kind of difference I can say.
So which one is? I'm sorry. Which one is the more expensive?
I think now if you have purchased a license, you will have both.
Yeah, most of the licenses you get both at the same time. It depends, because you can buy a single-use license, you can buy a commercial license, you can buy the enterprise license, and they all bundle together differently, but most of them generally give you both.
Any other questions, comments?
Somewhat unrelated, but obviously your name is Northern Kentucky. Have you come across the river at all? Looks like all your flights are kind of on the Northern Kentucky side. Is that a licensing thing, or just haven't been?
So I work for Planning and Development Services of Kenton County. We're a local government agency specifically for Kenton, Campbell, and Pendleton County. I can't use taxpayer dollars outside of their counties, yeah. Have I taken the drone over and flown it? Yes. For work? No.
Yeah, so when taking the pictures, in terms of the spatial coverage, what size would that be for one picture?
That is solely dependent on your height.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's actually a really good question. So the max elevation that you can fly a drone is 400 feet. Most times my projects never go above 100 feet. You're just not going to get the pixel resolution that you want. You're required to take more images, and in the JPEGs, I don't know, they're maybe a meg, not even. We've got 12 megapixel camera, 4K video on that. So coverage, let me see if I can find this one. It's kind of hidden behind the text, but this image here, that would have been taken, that's probably 200 feet across. If you go this way, probably 200 feet of ground. I may be 80 to 90 feet up on that one. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Could you just briefly describe this permitting thing? Where it can fly and where it cannot?
Oh, okay.
Very general.
Very general, yes. So the most general I would say is go to knowbeforeyoufly.org. It is a website from the FAA that has maps that says where you can and can't fly. As a commercial pilot, I can fly anywhere in the United States minus government facilities, like military facilities, military bases, and then there are they're known as 5-mile zones outside of airports. You have to get authorization from the FAA to fly in those areas. Before, that was a 90-day process. If you wanted to do a flight that would take you 5 minutes, you had to wait 90 days to get approval of that flight. Now, I can pull up an app on my phone, submit the request, and get it before and get a text approval before I even close the app out. That's called AirMap, and that's another good resource app to use. AirMap, and there's one other company that does the same, but I will promote AirMap. I really like their company and their interface. So you need that authorization to fly within 5 miles of an airport. Other than that, you're good to go. Really, it's just studying your local area. Cincinnati has one of the largest, Northern Kentucky has one of the largest airports here, CVG. 2/3 of my most populated areas in the county are within that 5 miles. That's difficult for me when I'm looking for projects and say, hey, I need to be able to fly somewhere, and I can say I can't do it. So having that authorization is really key, but generally it's that Class B airspace, which when you're studying for the test or anything, you'll start to understand those. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the restrictions. KnowBeforeYouFly.org. That's my number one thing.
How long do you take to get authorized?
To become a commercial pilot, if you wanted to, you could go take the test today. Flamingo Airlines at Lunken Airport, they are the closest FAA facility. You could call them up, you bring a $150 check and your license, and you could take the test. Unless you know meteorology and airspace really well, you probably won't pass the first time. But once you do take the test, you are instantly valid, and you are valid for 2 years. After that, you have to take a aeronautical recurrence knowledge test. It's like 40 questions. Just kind of covers the basics to make sure that you're keeping up with the rules and regulations. This is still a relatively new field. I mean, drones have been around for years and years and years, but the commercial aspect and bringing it to local governments and things like that, that was unheard of 5 years ago. So the rules and regulations were really slow to catch up to the boom of what drones were. So especially the first 2 years, it was very difficult to keep up with because the FAA was kind of playing catch up with something bad would happen and the FAA would go, we don't like that anymore, you can't do that. And that's how they played their game. It's caught up and now they're much more understanding with some things, but for the most part, yeah. Yes?
How fast does it go?
This one, depending on the wind, if I can get the wind with me, I could go 40 miles an hour, but generally it'll fly about 20, 25.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Each day, a 4-pound unmanned aircraft with 6 rotors and a 4K high-definition camera monitors the conditions of Kenton County and its neighbors in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region. This region is easily identified by a breathtaking skyline that sits within a valley surrounded by hilltops, which provide dramatic views filled with historic neighborhoods and vibrant commercial districts. Under the direction of Planning and Development Services of Kenton County, the Northern Kentucky Drone Lab protects Kenton County and its neighbors by gathering critical data, responding to emergencies, and documenting important changes to our community. Joining Kenton County at the confluence of the Licking River and the mighty Ohio River is Campbell County to the east. The confluence of these rivers provides scenic views and also allows for commerce to flow through the region. However, this waterway system also presents challenges. In February of 2018, the Ohio River and its contributaries rose 34 feet above its normal water level, resulting in the highest flood level the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region has seen in over 20 years. Northern Kentucky Drone Lab inspected inaccessible houses to determine occupancy, while also documenting flood levels to better understand future flood events and response efforts. This assistance and data resulted in an increase to the United States Geological Survey grant budget by $18,000 for stream mitigation. Imagine if you went to your bathroom faucet in your home to turn on the water and no water came out. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab protects our resources by helping to keep water accessible and safe to drink for Kenton and Campbell counties. Traditional water tank inspections take a 2-person team around 4 hours to complete and require safety harnesses to climb to the top of the 150-foot towers. Drone inspections of the same caliber have been conducted lasting only 10 to 15 minutes. Not only did the Northern Kentucky Drone Lab inspection save time and money, it adds security by keeping important human inspectors safely on the ground. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab keeps people out of danger, and it also provides a view that could never be seen by any human. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab has documented a 17-acre housing development involving hilltop removal, stream realignment, and fills up to 35 feet in height. The drone has documented the extensive topography changes at this site over time brought about by traditional cut and fill techniques, which is the process of constructing development by cutting material from one area and filling other nearby areas. Here we see a time lapse documenting the progression of earth movement across this 17-acre development. In March of 2018, the Northern Kentucky Drone Lab was dispatched for a ground fire thought to be caused by a locked-up wheel bearing on a train. Over 7 acres of land was burned, including a 2,300-foot stretch of railroad right-of-way. The drone was used to detect hotspots, and with this data, County Emergency Management, Public Works, and 7 fire departments were able to save a subdivision from burning to the ground. Northern Kentucky Drone Lab is prepared to rush to any scene. No challenge is too great, no threat is too dangerous. The drone is on call to assist with accident scene reconstruction for highway fatalities and participates in active shooter planning. The program was used in the Link GIS initiative to prepare for active shooter situations by gathering imagery of windows, doors, and surrounding areas which first responders can use to make fast and accurate decisions. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab has proved to be invaluable, and the investment in this program continues to pay dividends. Stevenson Road in Erlanger experiences flooding during major rainfall events, causing traffic delays, road closures, and street decay. Something needed to be done. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab provided footage to help tell the story of local citizen experiences, playing an important role in the story map that swayed the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet to contribute $1.8 million to improve the road. And how much does something like this drone lab cost to create? With the drone, accessories, and software, PDS has invested approximately $3,500 to begin this program. The Northern Kentucky Drone Lab has increased safety by its use of drones in inspections, improved workflow with new and more efficient methods of data acquisitions, and built better community relationships by educating the public on the benefits of Northern Kentucky Drone Lab. We at PDS are honored to be awarded the Distinguished Single System Award and wish to congratulate all the other ESIG winners. Please keep up with the Northern Kentucky Drone Lab and follow us on Twitter at Northern Kentucky Drone Lab.